Press record. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Really excited to have you here for the first installment of our PXP Propelling Pathways. Today, we're going to have Dr. Montrell Taylor talk about his experiences in managed care and give a little bit of a glimpse as to how you can go and pursue managed care as well. So I will also pass it off just to give a little background as to what PXP is, and then the two constituents within PSP, which is PILS, Pharmacy Initiative Leaders, and the Pharma Collective. So I'll pass it off to George and Matt.
Yeah, I'll let Matt go first. You know, I'm a gentleman, so I'm gonna let my gentleman go first.
I am also a gentleman, but I'll take it. So on the Pharma Collective side, pretty simple. We're running on 2 years now, which is kind of crazy to say out loud. But we're really just a group of students who kind of looked up and saw that there weren't a lot of opportunities, or there weren't a lot of things going on for people like us. So what we did was we tried to create that space and make it okay to have and start these kind of conversations that are industry related and not so much industry related as well, just so we can kind of start to build on that. And we definitely made a splash, and we definitely have a lot more coming up in the future. But once again, our main goal and our main mission is just to provide opportunities and provide resources for students to kind of get that leg up in the pharmacy or pharmaceutical industry, and who may not have that chance. So we're really, really looking forward to continue to do so and continue to stay with us, because we definitely have a large grip or large array of things to kind of stay ahead of, definitely after we graduate as well. So stay with us, and stay with PXP as well, definitely with our series. So I'll go ahead and pass that off to George to kind of tell you more about the pill side, and we can kind of get into the show as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. And as he said, TSU holds it down. So back-to-back TSUs on the mic.
It's only right.
So for those who don't know, my name is George Upham, and I graduated from Texas Southern University. And that's when I found out about PILS. PILS was started in 2016 by Dr. Brian Sackey at Howard University. And that year, he started it as an organization on that campus. Myself, Brian, Josh, and Onye took it national, like literally. And since then, 6 years later, and keeping going, we're now a social enterprise, no longer just a nonprofit. We're a social enterprise focused on changing the look, the face, and the feel of healthcare. And so as pharmacists that are leading that charge, we want to ensure that pharmacists understand that can be at every stage of healthcare, both the medical and the commercial side. And then some people can decide to do other things in entrepreneurship and fashion, real estate and things like that. And so that's our job, to change the face of healthcare. And we're excited to be partnering with PXP, the Pharmaco, in our PXP partnership to propel pathways. And so with that, I'll pass it back to Tati.
Awesome. Thank you, George and Matt. And I also realized that we did not introduce ourselves in the Pharma Collective. So we'll go ahead and do that really quick before we introduce our amazing speaker. So my name is Tatiana Hines. I am currently a P4, hopefully soon to be a pharmacist at University of North Carolina, Go Heels. And I am an incoming fellow at Bristol Myers Squibb for regulatory advertisement and promotion. And I'll pass it off to Joe.
Everybody doing this evening. My name is Joseph Kalu, P4 coming out of Howard University. Soon to be pharmacist, PharmD, like the rest of my colleagues. I am the incoming fellow at Seagen in Bothell, Washington. So I will be moving over to the West Coast in clinical development. Pass it off to Milka.
Hello, everyone. My name is Milka Tawalda. I'm currently a fourth-year PharmD MBA student at High Point University. I am an incoming Eli Lilly Medicine's Innovation Hub Leadership Development Program Research Scientist. Sorry for the long title, but I'm happy to be here.
Which just leaves me. And again, my name is Matthew Otule, a fourth-year pharmacy student, soon to be pharmacist. I will continue that thread. Next year, I'm headed to Boston, actually. So I'm here in Houston now, headed to the East Coast. So definitely a little nervous, but excited for what's to come. And that's in medical affairs. So happy to be here and definitely looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So now I have the pleasure of introducing our guest speaker. Dr. Montrell Taylor joined Avalier in February of 2022 as a senior associate in market access and reimbursement. Dr. Taylor supports the development of market access strategies through robust analysis of clinical data sets and reimbursement landscapes. Prior to joining Avalier, Montrell was a manager in medical affairs communications at Tahoe Oncology, where his thought leadership encompassed scientific and medical reporting, as well as competitive intelligence and congress planning. Montrell's experience in real-world evidence developed during his work in the Academy of Managed Care Pharmacy, or AMCP, slash Genentech Evidence for Access Program and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. A mouthful, but we got there. Montrell earned a PharmD from Howard University and a BS in biochemistry from Middle Tennessee State University. He currently lives in Raleigh, North Carolina with his wife, Dr. Shanice Taylor, and their dog, Wave E. Taylor. When he's not busy with managed care consulting, you can find him playing his PlayStation 5, trying out new restaurants, or passively investing in real estate. So with that, thank you so much, Dr. Taylor, for coming today. And we can get, yeah. Awesome. And would you like to give any opening words?
No, just grateful for the opportunity to be here. Thank you all, Pills, Pharmaco, for reaching out, and definitely just looking forward to providing some valuable information and just kind of providing my insight on managed care, consulting, and whatever other questions you all may have for me.
Okay,
Awesome.
great.
Awesome. So let's get into it. I mean, we're propelling pathways. So Montrell, when I was in pharmacy school, I didn't know anything about managed care. So can you first, before we get anything, just define what is managed care and how can people learn more about it? Can you share a little bit about that and how did you even get into that?
Sure. So basically, managed care is the practice of using clinical evidence to support the access of a medication. So it's essentially bringing the evidence that says, hey, drug X is effective. So, can you all cover this medication for patients? And honestly, managed care, it was something that I wasn't interested in early in my pharmacy school career. I know that AMCP is a big organization that talks a lot about managed care, and I honestly didn't know about it until like my P4 year. Because what I realized is that in managed care, there's also essentially managed care is an umbrella. And under that umbrella, you have like PBM, pharmacy benefit managers, you have like clinical programs, patient access programs, formulary management, and things like that. So once I was able to kind of figure out there are different buckets of managed care, I was able to figure out which bucket I was interested in the most, which is access, and that is the field I'm working in now. So I think for any pharmacy students that are interested in managed care, I would say AMCP is a great resource. I was able to get an internship through AMCP with Genentech, and that gave me firsthand experience in managed care, working in evidence for access. So I would say, yeah, first start off AMCP, as well as of course LinkedIn, to find other managed care pharmacists, and they can provide lots of information.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I love how you also mentioned LinkedIn and how utilizing your network can really give you those opportunities and to just learn about different areas within pharmacy. So with that, how did obtaining a career in managed care contribute to your long-term goal that you've had for yourself as a pharmacist?
That's a good question. So once I finished my time at Tahoe Oncology working in medical affairs. So medical affairs, for those who may not know, is a lot of clinical information. It's very scientific, a lot of science focused activities. So after I completed my time at Tahoe as a medical affairs manager, even though I was able to work on drugs that were approved for rare diseases, something that I would notice is that they were extremely expensive, so you will have a drug that is extremely effective, safe, but if it's extremely expensive, who is going to be able to take it? Who's going to be able to access it? And especially right now, a huge topic right now is inflation and the rising cost of everything. And recently there have been a lot of reports of, extremely high drug prices. So once I figured, so once I kind of saw that there was this roadblock of drug pricing, I wanted to figure out more about the access side. I wanted to figure out more on the managed care side. And honestly, it was just by God's grace how I was able to get this position I have now. Because when I was a P2 student, I was working in Walgreens, just typically doing my thing in Walgreens. And there was a guy who was talking to me about consulting. And we had a conversation, didn't really think much of it, but I just kept it professional. We had a conversation, and fast forward 2 years later, after I became a pharmacist and worked in pharmacy, that same guy actually reached out to me on LinkedIn, like literally out of the blue. So I don't know how he remembered my name, but he reached out to me like, "Hey, Montreal, basically interested in consulting and managed care," and I was like, "Definitely." So the stars definitely aligned for me. And then once I was able to connect with him, I got into access, which is the field I'm working in now. And now I'm able to understand, okay, how are patients able to afford medications? And that's through like Medicaid, Medicare, private insurance, such as like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna. And now I'm able to fully understand the entire reimbursement landscape to know how the drug goes from pharma company all the way down to the patient, who pays for it, co-pays, things like that. So
That's awesome. And so I know you talked about it even a little bit in your last question, and you introduced a couple of different areas of managed care, but could you give a brief explanation of some of the different functional areas? Because we definitely want to propel pathways. We want to expose, we have a lot of P1s and P2s on here too, which is amazing, and kind of give them, I know you don't have to be an expert, but just a little touch base off of your experiences on those different areas.
yeah, sure. So one area that I think of specifically is there's an area known as, what's the correct term for it? Like patient access programs. And basically these are programs where manufacturers, they will have incentives or benefits for patients. So they will provide like copay cards. They also will provide transportation for patients to get to and from different doctor's offices. And they will actually look for assistance from pharmacists with these patient support programs. Because as we all know, pharmacists are the most accessible professions in the community. So there have been a lot of cases where pharmacists are able to be pulled in to these patient access programs and be able to show their benefit in that. Something else that you all may hear about a lot is PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers, who definitely I think they get a bad reputation sometimes. But there's another way that pharmacists can also work in managed care as well, because basically what PBMs do is they work with the pharmacy and the manufacturers just to make sure that the drug transportation process goes smoothly. So just to make sure that when the drug goes from the manufacturer to the pharmacy, that includes a lot of paperwork, a lot of different technical information that goes along with that. So pharmacists are also able to, tap into the PBM side of managed care pharmacy. And lastly, like formulary management, when it comes to hospitals that are able to provide certain medications have to be listed on what's called a formulary. So pharmacists are able to give their input as far as, hey, I think drug A should be on the formulary. Hey, I think drug B should be on the formulary due to its, it has a new mechanism of action, it has a great safety profile. So there are, numerous ways that pharmacists can benefit and engage in managed care activities.
Oh, thank you for that. It's funny because I'm today old when like it's actually a name. Like managed care is about actually managing the care along the formulary, like in affordability and access.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There are a lot of new areas that I didn't even know about, so really cool to learn. With that, Milka asked a great question in the chat just about current events and access. So there are companies like Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, and Sanofi that have been capping the cost of insulin. So how does that impact or affect managed care's role for access to patients?
Great question. It's actually something me and my wife talk about sometimes. So I would say that from my very limited perspective, like I don't know the specifics of it, but from just what I see, you know, I think patient will greatly benefit from this, of course, and they have a lower copay. But something that I'm interested in figuring out how pharma companies will do is, since they're having that huge price cut in insulin, how that affects negotiation with payers. For example, since the patient is paying a lot less, that gap that is basically created, I'm interested to know, will the manufacturers eat that gap? Will they just add it into the cost? Will that cost fall back on the payer? Because basically, like, in order for a patient to pay a copay, um, a health plan such as like Medicare, Medicaid, they front most of the cost for the medication. So since most of this cost will be pushed back on the health plan, I don't know if the plan will negotiate something with the manufacturer or who it may be. So I think that's something that's going to be interesting to see in the next couple of months when it comes to these huge price caps for insulin.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And I also wonder what other companies are going to follow suit with maybe other disease states and other chronic things that are affecting vulnerable communities. So I think that that is definitely a very convoluted area that I'm looking forward to seeing how it progresses.
Definitely.
Yeah, and so this question looks like it ties into, so there's a question in the chat, but we also had a prepared question for you, and I think they kind of tie together. And so I'll read our prepared and see if it doesn't address Ariel's question in the chat. And so what things did you do or achieve during your pharmacy school that made you stand out as a candidate for this role? And definitely understand that this wasn't something that you were going for, but knowing that you're there now, what are some of the skills and things that prepared you for that? And then taking that and using the chat, how can someone that is now a P1, P2, P3 be more prepared based off of what you know?
Definitely. So one of the most important things, any P1, P2, P3, P4 is maybe a little too late, but maybe. One of the most important things that you can do is like get involved. Like whether it's APHA, SNAFA, I don't know, what else, AMCP, IPHO, whatever it is, like try to get some type of leadership position early. Like if you do it within your P1, P2 year, then once it's time for you to be a P3, then you will have experience in the leadership position that you can talk about. Because honestly, when I was interviewing for different jobs coming out of pharmacy school, a lot of employers were interested in, okay, I see you were president of APHA, like what did you do? I see that you were vice president of ASHP, like tell me about some things that you did. And not only does they help you stand out as a candidate when they look at your CV, but it also helps you network and meet a lot more people. Because I know that, I think like one of my mentors kind of broke it down to me like this, like when it comes to when you are going for a job, right? Like you have to look at it from the employer's perspective. They're looking at, 50 to 100 different CVs and resumes. So you have to kind of think about what are some things that you can do to stand out. And like I said, one of the biggest opportunities that I can think of is being involved, getting a leadership position. I know, for example on here, Joe. I know Joe, he was, I think, president or vice president of IPHO early in his career. And now we all see Joe is headed to CGen as a fellow. So I'm pretty sure everyone else that is on the former co-team has also been engaged as well. So man, I can't stress that enough, get involved early. And to kind of go back to your question, being involved, this helped me get a lot of transferable skills that I use now. One skill that I had to just use today is project management. So I was just assigned to this project, which requires me to manage a team of colleagues, and being able to be, the president of APHA early in my pharmacy school career, I was able to learn how to, communicate with people, how to, um, set goals and set tasks, but not being too, micromanage, or like how to set goals to kind of motivate the entire team. So that's something that I can't stress enough is, getting involved, also going to different conferences like SNAFLA conference, APHA conference, networking with different colleagues, because that definitely provided me with a boost for my career. Oh, and then one more last thing I want to add, and also like when it comes to like applying for like internships and like going for these different positions, whether it's a leadership position or internship, whatever it may be, if you apply for something and you don't get it, like, don't take it personal. Like, just apply again. Just trust that God always has a plan for you. I know for me, when I got my internship at Genentech, I honestly applied for the internship like twice and got denied 2 times, but I kept applying. And I applied to a lot more other internships, and I got denied for those as well. So, continue to, keep going, keep applying, and, just have faith and confidence that you will end up in the position that you're supposed to end up in.
Awesome.
That's really great. I love your closing words on that is just keep going, and don't take no as a definitive no. There's always different opportunities. So I think that's really inspirational. We also have a current working pharmacist in the chat who asked a question. So Ariel has experience in specialty pharmacy, specifically in LDD access and providing financial assistance. She's wondering what next steps could she take to transition into an access position in managed care or even in pharma, such as entry-level positions or things like that. But she has a strong interest in market access.
I would say entry-level position, maybe as a consultant, will be a good role. Sorry, give me 1 second. Let me just read the question real quick. What next step? Yeah, I would say maybe a consultant role would be a good position, especially working as a pharmacist in specialty pharmacy. That is something that is extremely beneficial in the market access space, because when it comes to working with specialty pharmacy drugs, they can have a completely different reimbursement access. Like specialty pharmacies working with, specialty pharmacy patients can be an entire different ball game. So I would say like entry-level consulting position would be a good starting role. And then one thing that I love about consulting is that you're able to work on a variety of projects within a short period of time. So you could go into, so for example, me, when I was brought into the consulting role, one of the first questions my manager asked me was, okay, Montreal, what are you interested in? Like, what do you want to learn more about? So they were able to kind of give me the opportunity to kind of choose my pathway and choose what I wanted to learn more about. That way I was able to kind of grow my subject matter expertise in different areas. So that's what I would say. I think actually Avalier may be hiring for a consulting position. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Go ahead and propel that pathway on this call. That would be amazing. But no, thank you for sharing that. And again, Ariel, feel free to reach out to us directly or Montreal for more guidance, and hopefully that did help. And so, Montreal, you're now in your managed care career, and everything ain't rosy. So, what are some of the challenges and the roadblocks you've faced? So, we just want to know what they are, and then obviously on this call, and you're still hired, your badge is still working. So, how did you overcome them?
So for me, my challenge was like when I first got into the consulting role, there was like essentially like 5 to 6 months of just, just reading and just understanding what consulting is, understanding the culture. So when it comes to being a consultant, like you basically work based off of the projects you're assigned to. So in those first 5 to 6 months, I wasn't assigned to any projects. So I was kind of like questioning myself, like, am I supposed to be doing something? Like, why do I feel like I'm not getting that on projects? Did I do something wrong? So that was kind of my first challenge, was just being kind of too anxious. Because if I was to look back at it now, if I was to be thrown into projects, then I wouldn't have known like what to do on the project. I would have been stressed out. So it definitely was a blessing in disguise. So just being anxious was a main challenge that I was kind of going through at first. Another thing was just thinking that, since I'm a pharmacist, people expect me to understand everything. But something that I learned quick is that, like life is about continuing to learn, continuing to ask questions. I think that, once we get our titles, we feel that people look to us for all the answers, but it's okay to not know the answers for everything. But people just want to make sure that you at least, ask questions, or at least try to figure out the answer. Being in pharmacy school, going through, so many didactic classes, we have, we've shown that we can use our brains to research and find answers to things. So, like once you're early in your career, don't think that you have to have all the answers, because I definitely didn't. I definitely don't. And, just continuing to learn and, ask questions every day.
Awesome. Always stay curious. Can you kind of go into what the difference is between managed care and pharma industry specifically? I know that there's some overlapping, but are there any specific nuances? Asking this because some students may get opportunities in managed care and or in industry and want to have like those transferable experiences.
So honestly, in my personal perspective, I look at managed care as being a part of industry. The only separation that I kind of do with the work that I do now is I separate consulting from industry. That's kind of different, because industry people, they work with consultants to create plans. But as far as industry and managed care, I kind of look at that as the same, because the industry can be extremely you know uh, diverse as far as the different functional areas. Like some companies have medical affairs, some have regulatory, legal, and managed care will normally fall under like the market access side, or like it can sometimes fall under the clinical side depending on the company. But to answer your question, I would say that managed care is included as a part of industry. So if you do have industry experience, in my opinion, I think managed care companies would love to see that, because you have first-hand experience with pharmaceutical companies, with manufacturers, which is something that they would love to see in an employee.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you touched on it, but I guess especially on that tail end, I mean, in your opinion, I mean, what is the best way to enter the field? Is it through a residency? Is that required? I know you said you kind of put it more industry, but is a residency required at all to get on that side, or what's your thoughts?
Um, my thoughts is, I wouldn't say, I mean, I wouldn't say a residency is required, but I mean, a residency couldn't hurt, a fellowship couldn't hurt. I don't think it's required to necessarily get in my specific position. But I think some experience will just make you stand out as a candidate, whether it's an internship while you're in pharmacy school, whether it is a residency. But I wouldn't say it's required, but at least having some type of work experience, I think, will make you stand out as a candidate, and give you a better shot at getting hired. Um, yeah, from my experience, from what I've seen.
Like being a product of pills or something that could help you, ensure
Yeah,
you put me up with this. That can help. Okay, I just want to, apps are out, peeps. If you fourth year pharmacy student, applications is out. Go
and
ahead, Tati.
yeah, and that's actually a great point, because like back when I was interviewing for fellowships, being in the Pills mentorship program definitely helped me a lot with my interviews. Like, now granted, me and my wife did a lot of practicing as well on interviews, but pills definitely played a huge part in, my professional development. Because I know that when I was doing like a mock interview, it definitely helped me prepare for my actual interview as far as the professionalism, the things you don't think about, like looking at the camera. So definitely appreciate, the pills mentorship for helping me get here as well.
Yes, pills has definitely helped me as well during interviewing. So, especially like you said, looking at cameras and just being able to navigate the virtual space. So, as George said, the applications are out. So, if you want to look on their Instagram and their bio, I believe they do have their application there as well. As you were talking about mentorship and the value of the different experiences that you've had with coaching, can you explain what that gave to you when you were transitioning into your new career field?
Um, you mean as far as like what did mentorship give me?
Yes, like the value and any like takeaways.
Yeah, I would say that it gave me like the resources to understand what managed care is. It kind of gave me the resources to know like how I wanted to create my career path, because I know like when I was in the mentorship, one of the things was like, okay, like like where do you want to be in the next couple of years, or like something about like career planning was one of the components of it. So once I was able to kind of sit down and say, okay, first let me get to understand the medical side, then let me understand the access side, so I'll have a complete understanding of pharma. So that was one of like the most important things that I can think of is like career planning. And honestly, like even when the career planning is done, there may be different ways you get to that goal, but as long as you have some type of direction, I think it's extremely beneficial when it comes to just navigating in a professional setting. So the career planning was definitely a huge benefit for me.
That's awesome. In terms of our prepared questions, I definitely wanted to make sure we had the guide, and I say the whole team wanted to make sure that you had a guide and guided conversation. But I think the chat is starting to take us in a direction that when we talk about being pills, what's the applications out? We trying to be at every stage. Someone talked and heard of you working in real estate, and they wanted to understand how are you able to, and I'll read it directly from Doreen. It was mentioned that you also do real estate, which is something that Doreen is interested in. How do you get into real estate, and how do you balance managing your properties with working?
Okay, that's a good question. So I got into real estate like while I was in pharmacy school. So I kind of was balancing out, my time with pharmacy school as well as kind of having a side hustle. But something that was extremely um, beneficial when it came to working in real estate and also being a pharmacy student is that I had a partner, like my brother. He was doing a lot of the hands-on, the feet on the ground types of things. But honestly, what really helped me balance out real estate in school is I was talking to one of my mentors, and he basically had me sit down and just like write down how many hours I have in a week. And he basically had me write down how many hours I spend studying, how many hours I spend eating. And he was basically like, man, any free time you have, dedicate that into real estate. So once I really sat down and did that, that's really what I did with my free time in pharmacy school. And to answer the second part of your question, how do I balance managing my properties and working? So I am now a little bit more passive. So when it comes to managing properties, I look to like property management companies, and these are like people that charge about 10% of your rental amount to manage your properties for you. So that's one way that you can get people to manage your property without having to be so hands-on. Um, so that's kind of one of the main things that I use to help manage my properties and my projects that I'm currently working on. real estate projects, of course.
And that's perfect. I'm glad Doreen asked that, and I'm glad you touched on that, because that's definitely something that I'm looking to kind of get into when I move out to the East Coast as well. But I did have a question. So you kind of mentioned it, George kind of mentioned it, and I know you talked about it earlier, kind of about your path into what you're doing right now. But can you kind of like walk us through that stage? How were you, or what was it like kind of getting into that, like after P4 year? What did you, I know you said you didn't really get that fellowship, but you didn't get the residency. So can you tell us about that time? Was managed care your first option? Was that your second option? Like, just being the full transparency, can you just walk us through how you got to where you are right now?
Okay. All right, cool. And I'm glad that you said full transparency, because I'm gonna just be fully transparent with y'all. So when I was applying for fellowships, I applied to, I don't know, maybe about 20, maybe about 15 to 20. And I just knew that I was gonna be a fellow at a specific company. I won't say the company. And I didn't make it past the first round for that company. So I'm like, man, like I really had to sit back and think like, wow, are my interview skills bad? Like, what's going on? And I ended up getting maybe like two other like third round interviews, and I had like a couple of offers for fellowships. And there was one company that I was interviewing with for a fellowship, and they actually ended up offering me a full-time job. And this was in 2021, so this was like, still COVID was a big thing. And it wasn't in a field that I was interested in a lot. I mean, I was interested in it a little bit, but I knew that I kind of always wanted to do market access stuff, but this was a medical affairs communications role, which I wasn't really interested in a lot. But, being a pharmacy student, if someone offers you a job, it's kind of hard to, and then they offered me the opportunity to, because like mid-year is in December, and I didn't graduate until May of next year. So they offered me the opportunity to like work while I was finishing up school. So it honestly was just hard for me to turn that down, even though I wanted to pursue a market access role. So that's how honestly I started off in medical affairs. And like I did that for about a year, and honestly, I just was kind of wanting to navigate back into market access essentially. And like I said, it was just God's timing, because it was the exact time when I was trying to get into market access. The guy that I met 3 years prior, contacted me out of nowhere on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, are you interested in a job in consulting?" And I was like, "Definitely." Um, so, and then that's how I ended up where I am now. So it wasn't like, even though I did do the career planning, with pills, it wasn't like when I was a P1 or P2, I was like, man, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to work as a medical affairs for 1 year, and then I'm gonna do this for 1 year. And, I got everything planned out. Like, it wasn't like that, because I didn't really understand managed care until about my P4 year. So, like any P1, P2 students, if you do have an idea of what you want to do right now, I know for me, it completely changed like what I wanted to do as a P1 when I became a P4. Because when I first even got into pharmacy school, my goal was to like learn how to open up my own pharmacy. And then once I got into pharmacy school and realized how much money and paperwork and how much you got to do to open your own pharmacy, I'm like, man, let me just find me an industry job. I want to work from home, travel. So that's what I ended up doing. But I still enjoy what I do a lot. Like, I definitely always had a passion for wanting to work in oncology. Like, my dream job is oncology market access. So that's what I'm slowly kind of gearing towards. But like I said, early in my pharmacy school career, then I didn't. I thought I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't.
I love how you noted that what you wanted to do P1 year is completely different from P4. I think in my experience as a P1, I felt like I would look at everyone and say like, oh my gosh, like they just know exactly what they want to do. I'm so behind. So with that, what advice do you have for younger students and maybe even older students that are going into their P3 or P4 year who maybe don't have it quite figured out right now?
I would say the fact that you really want to have it figured out, that just that's just more reason to continue to explore different opportunities. Because I think one of the benefits of just exploring different opportunities is that you're able to kind of cancel out what you're not interested in for sure. Because like after I did my like my APs, my P4 year, I knew that I didn't want to be a hospital pharmacist. It just wasn't for me. So I would say like keep your mind open, keep your ears open to any opportunity. Because even the job that I ended up getting after pharmacy school, when I first saw the job, I was like, man, I'm not even gonna apply to it. And I just randomly applied just because, it was an opportunity. So I just think when you're early in your career, like don't really say no to any opportunities until you have an offer in your hand and know exactly what you want to do. Because in my personal opinion, I just think it's kind of early in your career to kind of say, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. Um, and you don't know what opportunities you may be passing up by saying no. So, just keep your eyes open, keep your ears open.
Yeah, and I want to build on that. I like that, and I'll tie in some of the stuff you said before because I think it's important for some of the P1s, P2s, which I'm glad of how many of those, or how many of y'all are on here. In terms of, I think as pharmacists in general, you get put in a box, and that's why we opened up and we talked about pills, about like changing the look, face, and feel of healthcare. Because as pharmacists, you're taught about obviously medications, and you can only impact people through pills, and no pun intended, or through the medical side. But Montreal showed, literally speaking, that hey, not only was he learning 300 drugs, top 300, he was also able to use his mental agility to get some housing and real estate on the side. But then also taking it further, he was able to then get a job and get an opportunity in a place that he wasn't even too thrilled about. He took it and grateful, but that he had the mental capacity to do it, and then also had the mental capacity to now be where he's at today. And I think as pharmacists, pharmacy students, try to understand more so the skill sets you're doing, and what he ended on in terms of when you're early, don't really say no. You're really not saying no because it's a different experience that's going to make you better and unique. I know we always try to prepare for interviews, but the interviews are to get you the job. The job is to have the impact. And the more experiences you have before you get to there to try to have that impact, the better you're going to be able to not just perform, but overperform and accelerate, get promoted, get more money, things of that nature. And so love that you shared the fact and that last statement of when you're early, don't really say no, because that's really your opportunity to lead multiple organizations. That's really your opportunity to do 2 to 3 internships. That's really your opportunity to make sure that you're getting different experiences, and maybe you too can manage care. You too can be a managed care person and providing access to people. So appreciate you, Montreal.
Mhm.
Most definitely. Very inspirational words. And I think Dominique had a question too about what advice do you have for a P1 who wants to apply for internships, considering that there is some lack of experience. And also throwing in a shameless plug, Dominique, we do have a past recording of how the 4 of us were able to get internships during our P1 and P2 years on YouTube. So we'll drop the link in there too. And if you have any questions, also feel free to reach out with that. But Dr. Taylor, do you have any advice?
Sure. So honestly, Dominique Taylor, that's my little sister. So hey, little sis. What I would say, sorry. So advice that I would say is, so when it comes to applying for internships early, like employers understand that you don't have a lot of experience, so they're not necessarily looking for lots of experience. What it is important to show is that your willingness to be involved, your willingness to be engaged or be interested in whatever the internship is. So I think that when you're early, and honestly, I didn't get it an internship my P1 year, so I may not be, the best person to answer this question. I think one of the former leaders may be able to better answer it. But any advice that I would personally say is, just apply, because I think that overthinking that they want you to have experience could possibly, make you think that you're not capable of getting an internship. But I think if you just, apply to a lot of positions, make sure that past experiences you do have, like whether you worked in college, you know, kind of beef up those experiences a little bit, I think can be an extremely helpful step to getting an internship. And also, you know, maybe you've done some things during your P1 year that you don't even think about that you could add to your CV. And that could be another tool for you to help kind of get that internship. So yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents.
Definitely. And I really liked how you kind of talked about like the power and persistence and like resilience. And I mean, I think that that's great for any level, right? I think that anyone who might be trying to get an internship, who didn't get an internship, that's great for those. And anyone trying to get post-grad opportunities who didn't get that. And even after that, people who are in their careers and might not be getting that job or might not be getting that raise or anything in their careers that they might be looking for. So I love how you were able to kind of tie in that your own resilience and how that worked out for you. But in the meantime, I did want to check in to make sure and see if there's any more questions before we kind of did wrap up for the night. So if you wanted to either come off mute or if you wanted to type in one last question in the chat, now is your time to do so.
I reserve the right. I have one last question, but I ain't gonna ask it first. I've been talking just a little bit.
Perfect. It's giving that you're about to take over, George. It sounds like it.
It's cool.
It sounds like it.
I mean, I thought someone was gonna ask this already, and I thought we were gonna like tease on it, but we didn't. And it's perfect because it's the last comment in the chat anyways. And so I'm more interested again as a professional and as someone who just proposed to my fiance, who's also in the healthcare industry. And you also are ahead of me. So now I'm like looking at you like, how do you, this is advice for me. How do you balance being married to a queen, you know, that's also a powerhouse in her own right, while you're also still doing your thing? How do y'all balance it, and how do things happen that way? I love for the people like me who are, you know, trying to follow in your footsteps to be able to have some gems.
Great. That's a great question. First off, congratulations to you for making that commitment. I know it's a huge step and definitely something that is not taken lightly. So congratulations to you for that. I would say, man, first and foremost is, you know, just ensuring that the foundation is solid by including God in everything you do. Like, just making sure that your mindset about marriage is based off of what God says about marriage. And that's kind of been something that me and my wife, we do a great job with, is making sure that our foundation is set on, you know, God and what he wants us to do with our marriage. But also something as far as my job, I just make sure that I set boundaries. You know, like I have set times where I know that, you know, I'm done working for today. Like anything that I'm doing at work is not life or death. You know, so for me, my priorities are set straight, and I just make sure that I understand what my priorities are, what my boundaries are. I think that sometimes when it comes to working, you know, we want to make sure that we, you know, doing the best that we can do. We want to put in long hours, but, you know, like, let's make sure that we're not forgetting about those who, you know, care about us the most, those who are on the other side of that screen, you know. So that's kind of like the two most important things that I can think of right now is, you know, first and foremost, you know, pray a lot, pray together, pray for each other. And secondly, you know, set those boundaries and say, hey, you know, I know that I know that I have a deadline by 6 p.m. So let me knock this out by 4 p.m. That way, when it hits 5 o'clock, let me log out, close my laptop, let me go chill with babe, and let's go hit the town. So that's kind of that's what I would say.
Man, if that's not propelling the pathway, I don't know what is. Appreciate you for those gems, especially again. And I'm not even gonna make a joke. I think not only is that key, that being the boundaries and having a foundation and putting God first key and having a partnership, I think it's also key as you all get to being a fellow, which we have people who get fellowships and you want to do everything and having those boundaries and having that focus, or as you're trying to be and get an internship, it goes contradictory to what we said in terms of saying yes to everything and not saying no, but it's more so just having the focus of what your foundation is. So no, I appreciate that, Montreal. I'm gonna pass it to, oh, go ahead.
I just want to add one last thing about like foundation and keeping God first, since we having a real transparent conversation. So like back when I was like juggling different job offers and fellowships, it honestly was kind of a lot because I didn't know like if I should take the position I'm interested in and go the fellowship route. But it's like, how can I turn down a job, as a pharmacy student? So honestly, man, what I did was I went in my room, closed the door, and just saw it and just ask God, like what should I do? Like, what you want me to do? And then, after that, that's when I basically got confirmation that my calling was to take the job. So I would just say, like, when you in pharmacy school, man, it can be tough, it can be stressful, but just make sure that you call on your support, which is, God. So that's something that was definitely important for me and something that definitely helped give me that confidence and give me that assurance that I was making the right decision. So
Absolutely. That's amazing. I bet we didn't know we was gonna take it to church this Wednesday evening. So I bet no one knew. But cannot thank you enough, Dr. Montreal. The gems that you dropped were beyond great. And I mean, the way that you just ended it, I think that was perfect. So I want to also thank everybody else, everybody who made it out tonight. We do have another part of the series. We are continuing on come April, so be on the lookout for more flyers and more announcements about what's next. But with that, hold on. I'm sorry. There is one question. I got you. I'm not gonna end it like that. This is from, I cannot pronounce your name and I do not like butchering names. So I'm gonna go ahead and say, she said thank you, or he or she said thank you, Dr. Taylor. Do you have any internship or mentorship opportunities for those interested in managed care? And that'll be the last question for sure tonight.
so I personally don't have any opportunities, but I know that AMCP, they do a lot of great internships. So I'll like put my contact information in here in the chat. And if anyone is interested, feel free to, shoot me an email and I can send you some references or some resources, some people that can, maybe try to find you an internship opportunity. So I can do that.
All right. Well, appreciate you again. Big shout out to everyone that's joined. I know you didn't have to be here today, but you were here with us. And big shout out to Montreal and the entire Pharmaco and Pills team. Thank you all for joining, and I guess we out, right?
Thank y'all so much.
Thanks, guys. See you in a couple weeks.
Have a good rest of your week.
Good night, everybody.